My name's Ruth Maxey. I am a URC minister. I'm a pioneer minister down in Milton Keynes. And I'm thinking about how we do church differently. We've all been doing church differently for nearly a year now, wherever you come from. But I think we need to be clear that different doesn't always mean better. I suspect I'm not the only one who is longing to be back seeing people face to face and not talking to a computer screen in my study. This last week, the sun shone and I was able to meet two of our community outside, sitting down for a coffee and chatting, and that was just brilliant. But what this pandemic has done is it has shaken everybody out of their comfort places, out of the places where we have been. And we've been forced to do things differently. And therefore, it's made many people begin to reflect on what is at the heart of church. For me, the core of church is a community of people trying to follow the way of Jesus. How we do church has to be about community, about relationship, and about following Jesus. I've been in Milton Keynes since summer of 2013. I was called to be a pioneer minister in an ecumenical partnership on the east of the city, into an area called Broughton and Brooklands, two new big housing estates. Over the last 7 years, a new church community called Church Without Walls has grown up and emerged. And I suppose we have been doing church differently right from the very start. Connecting with the local community is at the core of who we are. And alongside that, having worship that's really accessible and open to everybody. The theme through it all is about belonging before believing, but also creating opportunities for everyone to explore faith together. Our engagement with the community has often been through my involvement with local groups and partnership with them. Many of those who are involved in Church Without Walls I have met, and others have met through those connections in the community. Pre-pandemic, we were running things like language cafes, supporting the local community group, doing family fun days, big lunch, all those sorts of events. But even in the pandemic, we found ways to continue to partner with the community. And from next week, the gazebo is going to be back up again, and we'll be running a new mums group in partnership with the local children's centre. We also, during the pandemic, have encouraged people to decorate these wooden hearts with messages of hope to the community that they've hung up in the local churchyard. And we're planning to do some socially distanced activities over Easter, with possibly Easter gardens making under the gazebo, maybe crosses on the tree, and a whole range of other things. We've never had a building. So over the years, we've learned to be nimble in terms of our places. It's meant that the focus on people and the relationships at the core of what it means to be church has remained really, really strong. And when we talk about going back to church, we mean getting back together as a community. And I imagine that's what a lot of people in your churches will be meaning as well. Of course, what we did before the pandemic was already different to other churches. We had a 4-weekly pattern of cafe church, dinner church, forest church, and quiet church. Most were in different venues and moved around in terms of venues over the years, and each had a different focus. We've changed and adapted like everybody else during this last year, and we've had a lot of time on Zoom, which has had its advantages, but I would say particularly for families, as the year has gone on, it's been really hard to continue to be engaged with online stuff. We do daily prayer on Zoom, we run small groups on Zoom, we run our kids groups, contemplative prayer, and so on. With no building to return to, we've had to think really differently again. And this has been really important, and I would say it's probably important for all our church communities. I could have got quite stuck in thinking about how could I do cafe church now in these different times. And at times, I think, like everybody, I've gone down a bit of a rabbit hole of trying to simply focus on what we did and thinking how we could now do it. But shifting my thinking back to the core, community and relationship, following Jesus, has enabled me to think differently again. As soon as we were able to begin meeting again outside, back in May or June, I think, we began first to meet one-to-one in the front garden under this little gazebo. And then once the rule of 6 came out, I remembered that I had borrowed some scout gazebos for a community event, and I asked if I could borrow them. And these 2 gazebos went up and started transforming everything that we were doing. I didn't think, how are we going to get back to what we did? I thought, how are we going to be in relationship with each other? And the rest began to emerge. Our teenage group started up again. We did our kids group under the gazebo. Our discussion groups happened, and as you can tell, we moved into the colder months with blankets and hot water bottles. We did Discovery Church, a trail like Forest Church for groups of 6 to do with reflections online and prayers online for them just to follow themselves. And then when we were able, we started Forest Church back again, but this time without breakfast and 2 different groups to spread out the numbers. We tried outdoor services in the nearby churchyard, and we began to explore a sort of gazebo church type idea under the gazebos. When our church community began all those years ago, there wasn't a big plan. I didn't come with a big plan, and it rather just began organically. And that's how it's been in this time again. We've gone back to that organically exploring and emerging, just taking the next little step. What's right for us as a community this month? What's right next month? And how can we be a community together as we try to follow the way of Jesus in this different time? So don't do things differently for the sake of doing it differently. But equally, don't spend ages thinking about how can we find a way of getting back to what we did do. Go back to the heart. Find ways to build relationships and connections that you have and rediscover the heart of being church again. I don't think people long to be back in buildings. They long to be back in relationship with each other, because church is a continual reminder that the journey of faith is a corporate activity and not an individual one. And so however great our online offerings are, if they encourage us to separate experience of faith, then we need to be cautious in our enthusiasm, and we need to find new and creative ways to connect, to be together, and to be that community of people trying to follow the way of Jesus.
Hi there, it's good to be with you today. I'm Sue, the Pioneer Community Worker here in New Lowestoft, a new housing development that will, over the next 15 years or so, become a small town. I work for Churches Together in Leicestershire, and I'm supported by yourselves and 3 other denominations to build a healthy community first and foremost, and also grow a gathered Christian community. Having been here for 4.5 years, my primary focus has been to welcome new homeowners and with them to develop activities and events to help people get to know one another and create a real sense of place, dispelling the story that new housing estates are soulless. Those activities include all sorts of things, from toddler groups, walking groups, to seasonal outdoor events. And alongside that, we have developed a distinctively Christian group called Heart and Soul. This is an ecumenical group of Christians who are committed to being at the heart of this community. We also run Mossy Church, which is a family, nature-based faith group. One of the distinctive methods of growing this community for me has been about working in partnership with other organisations and seeing where God is at work and joining in. By good fortune, the developer has just produced a video about New Lowestoft and the growth of this community. It chronicles the journey and highlights the importance of community work and the importance of partnership work. Just to add a little background to what the video says, and in that Martin, the developer, cites Fred Drummond, who was the landowner who had the vision for New Lowestoft. He didn't want to see just another housing estate. He wanted to see a place where people could live, work, play and learn. This was the reason I was attracted to be part of this development, and I firmly believe that God has been at work in the design of this place right from the start, and that we are simply joining in with the mission of God here in Lowestoft.
In major schemes, it's really difficult to create a sense of community. You need somebody on site straight away.
As people started to buy the houses, even before they moved in, I got to know them, which was great.
As soon as we moved in, Sue came by, we had a little chat. She said, okay, there's a little hub where you can drop in anytime. I was like, okay, this is nice.
When this hub arrived, they had a place to meet, have coffee, get to know one another. You're there to help others create the community. So you're there as a springboard. The more you encourage, the more the community becomes self-sustaining, really.
And I think Sue has done a spectacular job. Literally, Lowestoft started as a small family, small village, which all the time grew and grew. Sue is the centre point.
We've gone from having a few families to a family picnic outside to last Christmas having a huge event with a steel band, Christmas tree, fair in the school. I think we had about 600 or 700 people come, which at that point, when we got probably around 300 houses, was pretty good going, really.
She was able to engage, she was able to help people out find their way, and we've developed a community spirit right from the word go.
I think that's the thing that you've got to have in a community, a spirit and people who's going to look after each other. I can't praise it enough.
It's shown that people see community as really important, and it's a reason why they'll choose to live somewhere.
Drummonds have supported the work that Sue does right from the start. Every major urban scheme should have a Sue Steer. We really do think she's an absolute star.
When we first got our application in, we met with Sue Steer, and she was actually pulling the community together, listening to what they wanted and trying to implement that.
In 10 years' time, I want to walk around and be really proud of what we see and what we've delivered here.
We want to stay here for retirement, build those happy memories, and looking forward to many more happy years here.
It is a real warming environment and excellent place to live.
I love what I do, yeah. And having that openness to say, just get on with the job and build this community has been an amazing opportunity, yeah.
The work that has been done and the commitment from the developers as well has really shown what you can do when you all work together.
He was quite mischievous, Fred. He take enjoyment from what we're doing. He'll really enjoy seeing what goes on here, and he wanted us to do the right thing, and we believe we've done it.
As we continue our journey here, our story of partnership and working with the community relies on us being a truly inclusive organisation. That's why we've developed Lowestoft Alive, which is a community development company that works with people of all faiths and none, and enables us to be part of the patchwork quilt that God is designing. We're called to pay attention to the rich variety of people and organisations that we live and work amongst, to listen to what they have to say and to embrace the differences we have, whilst recognising Jesus is our cornerstone. He is our building block, and we exist to help God's mission of extending the kingdom of God with all people. Thanks for listening.
Hi, I'm Matt, married to Sasha with our 18-month-old daughter Cara, and we've just moved to Bracebridge Heath, just south of the city of Lincoln. And like any minister starting out for the first time, I've got that heady mix of excitement and trepidation. And I'm really excited that the URC is supporting a role like the one I've been given, which by its necessity is outward looking. I haven't got a pulpit to preach from. There's no congregation to serve, no elders to lead meetings with. We have to be missional. And if you're excited by the gospel, then you are naturally excited by pioneer ministry. The gospel transforms individuals, and those individuals transform communities. Because that's all the church is, a group of Christians who have been anointed with the bongela, as it were, of God's grace, who have turned away from patterns of injustice and self-destruction and want to seek a new way of living. And we're told that everyone who believes receives the Holy Spirit, God's own presence dwelling with us. Because of the gospel, we become a people who not only want to live to please God, but he gives us his power, the power that raised Jesus from the dead, in order to help us do that. Take those transformed individuals, put them in a transformed community, and you have something which, by the grace of God, is world-changing. And that's exactly what we want to see here with the Heath Christian Partnership. It's exactly why I entered ministry in the first place, to play my part in the winning of individuals for Christ and the salvation of the world. Which all sounds brilliant, but it raises the question, well, where do you start with all of this? It's the tyranny of the blank page, and it's a paradox. We're both overwhelmed by the possibilities, but we're lacking in leads, contacts, jumping off points. But we've noticed that there are two things which all of us have as resources, and which form the bedrock of what we're doing here at the Heath Christian Partnership. And those two things are prayer and relationships. Every day we are praying for God to open new doors, to move things forward, to lead us where he would have us go, to speak to the people he would have us speak to. And every day we're going out trying to meet people, to build relationships, to say hello to our neighbours, to talk to the mums and dads who congregate at the park. And as an aside, our daughter Cara is just brilliant at that. She's our best ministry asset, as someone pointed out. Her name means joy, and she brings that joy wherever she goes, running up to every person and dog walker and their dog that she meets with a huge smile on her face. I'm very aware of the fact that ultimately it's not me, it's not my family that I want people to meet. Ultimately, we want these people to meet Jesus. John the Baptist was sent to prepare the world to meet Jesus. When Jesus sent out the 12 disciples, he said to them, "You will not finish going through the towns of Israel before the Son of Man comes," i.e., go ahead of me and prepare them to meet me. Their ministry, their interaction with the people they meet isn't their end goal. Their goal is, what is Jesus going to do in their lives? And are they prepared for it? And that's what we're trying to do here at the Heath Christian Partnership. Ultimately, we want to lay the way for Jesus to do something incredible in this community, in this area, to meet with individuals, to transform their lives, to set them on a new way of living, to be the new creation which only he can do by the power of his Holy Spirit. There are some practical things that I've been able to do. For example, one of the things that was highest on our agenda was coming up with a name for the organisation, hence the Heath Christian Partnership, establishing contact information and a social media presence. But really, it's been about prayer and people so far, and that's unlikely to change for the foreseeable future. That we're particularly keen to start meeting other Christians on the estate so we can start praying with them for our joint neighbours. But thankfully, for all the doors that we might be pushing, we might be trying to open, it's not really up to us, is it? Jesus said, "I will build my church." And for me, in particular, that's a great comfort. As long as he's leading us and he's the one in charge, I know that he will be faithful to his word.